to the Coders Campus podcast, where you'll learn how to code from one of the best teachers in the industry. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, the Coders Campus podcast will teach you what you need to know to master the art of programming. And now, your host, Trevor Page.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow coders, welcome to episode number 23 now of this Coders Campus podcast. Now, today we're going to be diving right back into what we have been sort of scraping the surface of, which is a topic of JavaScript. So not Java, but we're doing JavaScript. And more specifically, today we're going to be talking about variables and how they are used inside of the JavaScript language. So if you've never used a JavaScript language before, if you're just starting to learn about it, then this is going to be the episode for you to listen to. If you're already well-versed in JavaScript, then, well, this is just going to be a review for you, and there's not much else I can say about that. So, variables in JavaScript are pretty much straightforward. Once you essentially understand the concept of dynamic typing, which we talked about in, I believe it was 2 episodes ago of the podcast. So I believe it was episode 21 where we talked about dynamic typing in JavaScript. So variables in JavaScript are used like variables in any other programming language. They are used to store data for a period of time, such that at some point in the future, you can retrieve that data and do something with it. Pretty straightforward stuff. So let's say, for example, we want to keep track of someone's name while they're visiting a particular web page. We could collect their first name using something like prompt keyword. We'll get into the prompt keyword in a moment. It's used in JavaScript. But once we've prompted the user for their name and they've actually entered it and hit enter, clicked on OK or something, we would need to store it somewhere. Right? They've given us a variable, the data for the variable. We want to store it. So this is obviously where the JavaScript variables come in handy. So to store something like a name, we could use the following code. We want to create a sort of a variable with a variable name. So we would say var, V-A-R. Remember, there's no data type, so everything's just a var. And then you give it a name. In this case, we can call it myName, right? myName represents the name of the person who's typing in whatever it is that they're typing in. So we say var myName equals, and we can set it equal to a string. In this case, you set it equal to, the Trevor Page or something as a string. So when you're declaring a variable in JavaScript, there are essentially 2 mandatory things and 1 optional thing that you need to use. The first thing that's mandatory is the var keyword, V-A-R. That is what you use to say, hey, there's a variable here that I want to start working with and I want to create. The second mandatory thing is the name of the variable. You need to assign a name to the variable, whatever that name may be. Typical use case here, a typical convention that you follow is sort of like the Camel Casing, which means the first word in the variable name is lowercase. And then the second word in the variable name is uppercased in terms of the first letter of that second word. So for example, my name, the word my is lowercase, then name starts with an uppercase N and then a lowercase A-M-E. That's called camel casing. This is the same way that we declare variables in Java with using the same naming convention, using camel case. So again, 2 required things. First is the var keyword. Second is the name of the variable. Third thing is an optional thing. You actually can set a value for that declared variable. In this case, we said var myName equals Trevor Page as a string. Wrapped with the double quotes. Or you can use single quotes too. In JavaScript, double quotes or single quote both mean string. So there you go. Those are the 3 simple rules when it comes to creating a variable. I believe there are still some other rules for variable naming conventions that are sort of similar to Java, where you shouldn't start a variable name with a number or a special character or something like that. I don't even know if you can use special characters. Just use your common sense here when it comes to declaring the name of a variable. Don't get too crazy with your naming conventions, and remember to use camel casing when you're declaring it, or rather naming it. So. And then obviously building on this example that we just went with where we declared a variable, if you were to type in that name of the variable, i.e. my name, which is what we named it, if you type in my name somewhere below the code that we just talked about, then you can actually retrieve the value that's been stored inside of that variable. Imagine that. So just like in Java, we use it's the same concept for using variables as in JavaScript. So to display essentially what we've stored in our variable, we could use the alert function, let's say. So the alert function is used to display a pop-up alert on the screen showing the contents of whatever it is that you want to show. In this case, we could show the contents of the variable called myName, and we can show it with the alert prompt. I should say prompt, the alert box, pop-up alert. So in order to do that, you just type in alert, and you treat it like a method call. So you type in alert, and then you have your round brackets, opening and closing round brackets, and then inside of those round brackets, you can put whatever it is that you want to have displayed in your alert message. So in this case, we could just put in myName. So just plain old myName. That means that you want the alert box to pop up with the contents of the variable called myName, because we declared myName as being equal to the string of Trevor Page. And so therefore, when you type that in, it will alert, a little alert box will pop up with an OK button, and it'll just say Trevor Page. Okay? Simple as that. So then if you want to, you can go to the actual, show notes page, if you want to call it that, where you can see some of this sort of code in action. I guess I'll have it available at coderscampus.com/23. That should bring you to the appropriate, post. So here is where you see an example of where you can actually have create a button, and you can click on the button, and when you click on the button, it does a prompt. And this is where I was talking about. I said I was going to talk about a prompt. When you use the prompt keyword, or rather method, it's a method call. It allows you to ask a question and get an answer. So you can actually, just like the alert box, you can put some sort of a message in the alert method call, right? The prompt method call allows you to put a message. But the difference between alert and prompt is that prompt allows you to get a signal back from the user. So for our example that we're using here, we use prompt to get a name back from the user. So when you type in prompt as a method call, it will essentially pop up what looks like sort of like an alert box. It pops up some sort of a native, looking box onto your web page, which looks like a pop-up, and it just has an empty sort of text box area that you can type into, and then whatever string that you pass into the prompt method will be essentially the message that will appear above the empty text box. So, for example, if you typed in prompt, put it and pass in a string saying "What's your name?" as the string. That's what will happen. It'll pop up a message box that says, "What's your name?" And then below it, there will be a text area where they can type in and say, "Okay." And if they say, "Okay," it'll return whatever it was they typed into that message box. Okay, and then when we return that, then that's where we can store that into a variable, just like we had, talked about earlier, where I said var myName equals Trevor Page. Now instead we can say var myName equals prompt, right? Open bracket, what's your name, ? Close bracket type of thing. Well, the what's your name ? Being wrapped in a string syntax, so double quotes or single quotes. So there you go. That way you can get some interaction with the user, right? And you can store the response from the user into a variable. So a quick note on JavaScript variables. Remember that with JavaScript, variables are dynamically typed. So this means that you do not need to specify if your variable should be a string or an integer or a double or a float or whatever other data types exist inside of JavaScript. The JavaScript engine will run an algorithm in the background and determine what the type of your variable should be on your behalf. So it will do all the work for you. So this is essentially a time-saving process that will free up your precious brain power to focus on more important things like what to eat for dinner or how to fix whatever bug it is that you're dealing with. So essentially, in summary, JavaScript handles a lot of the grunt work for you when it comes to variables. There's really not much else to talk about here. It's not really that crazy when it comes to declaring variables and whatnot. So, if this is your first time learning about variables and this is a little bit overwhelming, then maybe you should go back to one of my original podcasts called the How to Program with Java podcast, where I start to talk about the Java language and I, get into the concepts about variables and I talk about them a little bit more in depth. But for those of you who already know what a variable is and how to work with it, all you need to know is the sort of nuances that JavaScript has when it comes to variables. So another little thing I forgot to mention was if you create a variable, let's call it var a number, or how about var my age? How about that? So say var my age equals, and then you can type in whatever your age is. I'm going to be 34, so 34. What happens in the background, like I said, with that algorithm that the JavaScript engine uses, JavaScript will know now that variable called my age should be stored as an integer in the back end of whatever it is, inside of the guts of your programming language and whatnot. So it will store it as an integer, whereas the var myName is equal to, quote, Trevor Page, end quote, that will store that as a string in the back end. So these two are fundamentally different things, or fundamentally different types, and they will behave differently depending on what type they're assigned to in the background. So even though you didn't assign a value to, or a type to those variables, they do have types in the background. Again, I'm just going back to what we were talking about with dynamic typing versus static typing, but I figured it was important to cement that concept in your mind. So, cool. If you enjoyed this episode, short, sweet, and to the point one, then I would recommend that you check out this awesome offer that I'm giving away to the listeners of this podcast. You can check it out at coderscampus.com/deal, DEAL. I still don't know how long I'm going to be offering this deal for when it comes to the podcast. I hope that I can offer it forever, but you never know. It could go away at any moment without notice. So this offer gives you access to all of Coders Campus. Okay, and this Coders Campus membership platform, which is a platform that allows you to get access to all of my courses. And, the be all and end all of all the courses that I have essentially related to learning how to program. Okay, if I happen to create some other, course that doesn't relate to how to program in general, then it won't be inside of Coders Campus because it wouldn't make sense for it to be inside of Coders Campus. In any case, you get access to it's almost 130 hours at this point. It grows every week. I'm always adding new videos every single week. I'm adding new courses all the time, almost every month, maybe every other month or so. So it's a growing library. It teaches you how to be an amazing programmer. That's the whole point, is I teach you how to become a great programmer. Just like I try to do in these podcasts, only with the Coders Campus membership, I actually am able to teach you with video. So you can actually see me, sort of look over my shoulder as I, type stuff out on the IDE in front of you on the screen, and you can learn how to code from someone like myself, who I consider myself to be a fairly, good programmer when it comes to, Java, JavaScript, and SQL, and using Hibernate and Spring, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, you name it, right? This is the languages that I speak. This is what I'm immersed in every day of my life, for the past 20 years. So I love this stuff. I'm passionate about this stuff. So if you like my passion, if you think that I'm a good teacher, check it out. coderscampus.com/deal. You get 30 days for free. It's on the house, just for you to, get in there and poke your head in, check it out, kick the tires, that kind of thing. If you like it, then you can stay subscribed. You'll be billed $10 a month after that. So really, it's very, very inexpensive. $10 a month for essentially all the courses you'd ever need in your career as a programmer is an incredible deal. And it's like I said, it might not be around forever, because that's just how crazy it really is in terms of this deal. I did offer this to everyone previously to test it out, but I realized that the numbers didn't add up when it comes to making this a viable offer for my business. So I'm exclusively right now only offering this deal to the podcast audience, because I find that they are my most avid fans, and these are the people that I like the most. So I'm giving that as an offer to you, to my audience. It's just to you. I promise I'm not offering it anywhere else. This is just to you guys on the podcast. So check it out, coderscampus.com/deal, DEAL. 30 days for free. Then it's just $10 a month. If for any reason you don't like it, you can cancel at any point, and I will not bill you. You just need to make sure that you ask to cancel before the billing happens, obviously. So, and even then, hey, it's just $10 a month, right? It's not that big a deal if you forget to cancel it. And hey, you're helping to support the podcast when you sign up for this Coders Campus deal. So coderscampus.com/deal. Check it out. Hope to see you on the inside. As always, ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourself. Happy learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coders Campus podcast. But before you go, Trevor has a favor to ask you. In order to keep these episodes free, he'd love for you to leave a rating and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to coderscampus.com/review to leave your own rating and review of the show. So if you have 30 seconds to spare right now, please help out by leaving a rating and review via coderscampus.com/review. It will ensure that you continue to get these awesome free podcast episodes each and every week. So if you like free swag, head on over to coderscampus.com/review. Happy learning!